Well, we're going to put together one of the Ork Battle Wagons. The one we're actually going to model is the one on the front cover. We're just going to completely tool this thing up with as much stuff as we can, really. So let's get stuck into the build. So step one, nice and easy. We have a couple of sets of wheels to make for the front of the chassis of the machine. So here are all the bits laid out. We're pairing off the wheels to show exactly what's required on each, as you can see. So we have one with the hub covered and one with the hole in the middle to allow it to slide onto the suspension set, and then various other bits and pieces like that. So if we start to glue them together, what we need to do is pair them off and make sure that the wheel sides, the wheel halves that we've picked, are the ones for the right set. Because they are different shapes and different designs. So obviously that one's not right, that's not right, and there we go. So if we look at them now, you can see the ones that has the slot, a flat slot in the tire, they will interlock together to create one wheel. So now that we find that pair, we'll just glue them together, so as we pull them apart again, and just along the inside, along the edge, like so. And obviously we've just done that wrong. We need to line up a slot on the inside of the wheel at the top there, as you can see, and it goes that way. I feel like I've achieved something with that, so we'll take another set and we'll pair them off as well. So same, similar design here. It is quite trying in your patience to try and find the method and the madness of Ork models, so you'll have to bear with me. There we go, there's our second, and then we have these two. Like so. And our final wheel. Like that. So we have our 4 wheels ready to go. We'll move them out of the way now and let them set properly, and then we'll move on. And the next step we have to move on with, we now have to make the 2 sets of tracks, as the Battlewagon is a sort of a half-track style design. So we'll get our tracks glued together now. So here we have our track, and we have 2 sprocket wheels which go along the inside of them. So once again, we just have to pair them off. You can see the hole and the sort of spike shape, they will obviously pair together, and we will put one of the sprocket wheels will go on to this wheel here, which has a slightly shaped notch on the top of it. So all you need to do is just glue along here. Along there, and along each of the areas where the glue will be in contact. We'll then take our sprocket wheel, line it up, make sure it's sitting in the right place, and it will just sit in like that and actually engage into the track. We'll then take the other half, and that will all slot together and sit into place like that to get us a nice rough set of track looking there. And we just have to do the same with the other side now. Just not using too much glue on this now. Place the sprocket wheel down. And the other half on top. Like so. So with the track complete, we'll now move on a bit further. So the next step along here, onto step 3, we now have to create the lower chassis for the Battlewagon. We have the base plate here, which has some little details with the grille that goes over the top of that. We'd recommend actually painting the inside of that before gluing this grille down. We also have the sides here, which have all the suspension mounts for the track and for the wheels, and a couple of little bits and pieces to go on the back. So here's the pieces that we got. We have the base plate for the chassis. We have that grille bit there. We have this back piece, this side piece, and these springy bits for the front wheels. I'm not terribly good at Orky accents, so please forgive me. I'm an educated Ork. Right, so our first steps along here, we basically have to put the sides on, and we have to put this back plate on as well here. So what we need to do is sing to ourselves for a moment or two. We'll then put our front panel down once we figure out where our front panel goes. It will sit like that, just with this short piece going underneath our overhanging part, and then we can just glue that down. So just along that edge. Be sure to use a nice amount of glue on this, because this will be one of the structural parts of the model, and if anything's going to break, it could possibly be this first. So as you can see, that will slot in underneath like that and match up with all these horizontal struts. What we can do now that that part's in place is take the glue and run along the seam right up to the front of the part, going over each of those horizontal pieces, just to make sure we've got a good solid glue and that everything is pretty well in there. So we'll take the other half and we're just going to run the glue along the inside this time. Just for pretty much ease of demonstration, ease of showing you what way things are going. Now we make sure that we have this relatively well lined up. Of course it is an Ork vehicle, but even Orks should have a slight sense of what things are supposed to look like. Obviously a gun's got a barrel on it. We'll just do the same trick again here. We'll run the glue right up to the edge of the part, just to make sure everything's getting contact with the glue. Okay, we'll then take this back panel here, and that will go in about there. Funnily enough, I've managed to glue it in badly, so what we can do is just pry the side of the chassis out until this fits in. Like so. So that's well in there now. We just jig around with it a little bit more, just to make sure it is definitely in the right place. And then on the backhand side of it, we'll glue down the inside so we don't have any nasty glue lines too visible on this. And that should hold that in place quite nicely. So over onto the top, we have our little grill piece, which is going to go over this bit of engine detail, or this bit of mechanical detail here. Now obviously we would suggest that you paint this piece first. If this was my own vehicle, I would paint that first, just to give, you know, a bit something a bit more special. When you look into the vehicle, you're going to see that detail. If you're at a tournament and you're looking for best painted, just go all out on it. If you're more like me, you just want to get the army out on the table, go for it. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, paint it black, dry brush a little bit of silver over it, stick that grill down. It's going to look good anyway. So we'll get down and we'll just glue this in. Now we could just leave it open, or we could even do something different, like even breaking half the grill off and bending pieces off, make it look like it's damaged or someone's lost their head with it. We're just going to stick it down now. I'll just sit in like that. And we can pull it away just from the very edges, just to keep that nice sort of panel line working there. You don't have to push it too far to one side or anywhere like that. So with that down, we'll then take our two suspension units for our front wheels, and they will line up with these two rectangular or square notches here on either side on the front. So we just take the glue now and just run around each of those like so. And we'll then, with the longer bit sticking out obviously because that's for the wheels, they will just press into place like that. And there's no other glue points for that, so hopefully that will be a nice strong bond for that part. And same on the other side. Again, pointy bits to the outside. Like so. So that's the basic chassis of our battle wagon now complete. With that down, we'll move on a bit further. So step 4 is quite easy. There's no parts required for this apart from what we've already built. We're just going to stick the tracks on and stick our wheels on. So we'll bring our chassis in, and first things first, we'll bring our wheels in. Now the wheels go on in a specific way. The instructions show that these wheels with the larger big metal plates that are riveted to them, they're actually going to go towards the front, while our wider, flatter tires will go towards the back. So let's see, we'll separate those out. Those are the back wheels and these are the two front wheels. So we'll glue these both on first. We'll just over the body with our chassis so that the weight of the chassis isn't interfering. And what we'll do is run a bit of glue just around there, maybe a little bit onto the inside, and just press it in. Pretty much exactly like that. Now it doesn't feel like it goes on very far, but there's enough glue on there to hopefully give it a nice strong bond. I'll make sure that they're sitting relatively straight, that's okay. We'll just do the same with the other one. Just round and in. And then press that in. Much like that. We'll then take our two back wheels and do the same. It's obviously not an exact science because it's orcs, but it's cool. I quite like it. And our final wheel. Although I have been threatened with pain if I do actually collect orcs. So there we have our two front wheels on at least, and now we'll bring our tracks in and we'll just put them into place as well. So the sprocket wheels, as far as I'm aware, are going to go towards the front, so this end is going to go towards the wheels, and that's obviously for this side. So if you put the chassis, say we'll just put it up like that, and all we'll do is just add glue to the back of each of these wheels again. Again, that's where all the glue points are. Lift the whole thing up and line it up like that, and we can flip it over the body, make sure everything seems to be sitting all right. As you can see there, that's all right there. It's pretty good. And then we'll do the same for the other side. Plenty of glue on each of these parts now, just to make sure. Better to be safe than broken. And same drill. Line it all up. It should line up a bit easier now that the other side's on, holding everything at the right height. So there we have our chassis with all our wheels and our tracks now added. So with that complete, we'll move on. And on to our step 5 here, up at the top. We have a couple of boards here, a couple of sort of running boards that cover the tops of our tracks here. This is for the added sort of dimension to the crew compartment. It adds a bit more room to the interior of the vehicle. So here we have the two pieces that we need now. Nice and simple. We're just going to bring our chassis in, and we'll just work out where these fit and how they fit, and we'll glue them in. So this one, we start to just dry fit this a little bit, try and figure out whereabouts things are going. Aha! So that's basically the way they're going to sit. Looking at the part itself, on the underside, we have a load of these little outside hooks, and we have a couple of struts on the inside. Now they will actually sit over the top ridge here and actually pretty much just clamps it into position rather perfectly actually. Everything lines up nicely there. So we'll take that piece off and we'll just glue it down. We'll just run a line of glue along the top here. It's my good old shaky hand. And on the corresponding piece, we're going to add some glue to this surface, just to make sure it's contacting anywhere on the front here. And then we'll just set the piece back down in the way that we'd shown. There we are. And we'll just do the same on the other side. Okay, and let's do the same again. So you'll be able to see these parts will sit over this side. And if we lift the part in, it'll just click into place. So with those two side pieces onto the crew compartment, we'll now move on a bit further. So on to step 6, what we have to do next is creating some sort of a bulkhead design here, which separates, if we look further down, separates the outdoor crew compartment from the inside cab area. So we'll bring the chassis in once again, and we'll bring in the 3 parts that we require. So looking at the instructions a bit more closely, they show a diagram of the way these parts will fit. So obviously we have the door frame, which is going to go into the middle, and then we have our 2 pieces that will go either side on top of these pieces here at a couple of different angles. Now it's relatively well lined out. As you can see, these are basically the markings for the panel line. So we have a straight one, the door frame, and then we have the curved plate here. So we're going to take the door frame first, and we're just going to glue that into place. So just adding glue along the bottom into the groove that's made for it, and taking it with these 2 big sort of square pieces at the bottom, because there's actually notches available there for that. Do it that way around. Now obviously that's towards the inside. Now these larger bolt areas are towards the inside to let the notches fit up properly. From there we will take this more angular panel, and let me see, we can try and dry fit this first so that we know kind of what we're doing. That will sit into place like that. I'll just show that a bit closer, as you can see. So we'll then glue that into place. And push it back in. Okay, so on the inside of the vehicle, what we're going to do is run a seam of glue down these 2 panel lines, just to make sure, again this is more just for structural reasons than anything else, just to make sure that if the model drops, and probably will eventually fall from a certain height, that some of these parts aren't going to break off just as easily. So our final panel has to go in. We have this nice little straight piece, and if we figure out where it's going to go, then we'll be sorted, and it will just sit nice and straight and just line itself up at the back like that. So we'll just glue that in now as well. and set it back into place. And once again, we'll take from the inside, we'll take the panel line and we'll just add some glue to that as well. And just press it together. Just tidy up any of the excess lines out there. So there's our bulkhead, or entry to the cab area. With that complete, we'll now move on. So under step 7, what we have now is to add the sides to our cab, and we have 2 armoured side plates, which will also take a couple of pintle mounted big shooters as well, and we have a couple of little back armour panels to go on to more or less start to enclose the crew compartment. So here are the bits that we need to arrange out. We have the 2 sides for the cab, we have our 2 little back armoured panels and our 2 side armoured panels. So we'll slide those over to the side and we'll bring the chassis in. Now, what we'll do first is put on our cab sides. Now the longer one with these sort of barrels at the back here will go on to the right hand side of the vehicle, and what we'll do is just glue along the bottom of it now. Right the way to the back of this piece. And this should line up with the bulkhead that we just glued in. So like that. And again, what we'll do on the inside of the model, if I can show, at that corner piece, we'll just take a line of glue up, start it at the top and just work our way down. And run some more glue along the inside panel line. Just to make sure that that's all pushing into place and we're not going to have any problems lining up parts later on in the build. So then we'll go around to the other side and do the exact same thing, except we have the shorter panel for this side. So once again, we'll just run our glue along it to the back of the plate, and that will sit nice and snugly there. Once again, with our panel line, just making sure that everything's glued in nice, that we won't have any problems. We shouldn't have any problems. Not to say that we won't, just hopefully we don't. So then we'll move on to our 2 side panels. Now these are pretty easily identified as to which is which. The 2 running boards at the back are 2 different lengths. As you can see, this is the longer one and this is the shorter one. So we have the longer side and we have the shorter side, which will go here. So we'll glue our shorter side on first, as it's right in front of me, it's handy enough. And we'll just take the glue, run it along the bottom of the panel. And maybe with some luck and figuring out that I've actually looked at the wrong side first, these parts will just sit in together. And do just a little bit of adjusting, like so. So then at the back of the panel, once again, just run some extra glue along that. It may not seem to be lining up very well. It's not a big deal. It is an Orky vehicle after all. We can survive with a couple of little gaps here and there, but you know, if you wanted to rectify those problems, that wouldn't be too hard to do with a little bit of super glue and a little bit of time and patience. So we'll move around to this side now, and we'll put our longer panel on. Just run the glue right along the bottom of this panel. And that will just sit into place on top there. And on the outside, there's the panel line. We'll just run some glue along and down the outside. So that's fine. We'll then take our two rear panels. Again, the rear panel areas are different widths. So we have a wider and a shorter. So we'll take the wider and we'll just add some glue to the back of it, or to the bottom of it. And it will go with this strut, this side going towards the inside of the vehicle. Am I looking at the wrong side again? Yes, I am. So my mistake, it actually goes on this side, so fantastic. I will then run some glue along, seeing as we've already touched that with the glue, I'll run up that side as well. And once again, the planar, more planar details with that strut will go towards the inside of the vehicle. And should all fit spiffingly well there. So that step complete, we'll now move on a bit further. So on to our step 8, we have some top armour to put onto the cab, a couple of little pieces there to make it look nice and sinister looking. We've got a large front armoured panel here which sort of looks like it's protecting an engine, and we have our really funky looking exhaust for the back. So here are the parts that we now require. We have our top armour with this little additional plate here to help narrow the vision slot. We have pieces of our exhaust up here, and we have our front sort of radiator grille. What we're going to do is, once again, we're going to slide everything out of the way here, and we'll bring in our chassis. And we're now working from the front, so what we're going to do first is take this big grille and glue that to the front. So we just add some glue just to either edge and along the bottom. And then once again, with any luck, that will just slot into place. Much like that. Nice big green, mean green grille, if we want to paint it green, that is, of course, duh. So the next thing along, we have our top armour and this sort of panel line, which will probably sit along here somewhere. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to dry fit all our parts here, just to guarantee to myself and to anyone that's curious as to what way these parts are going to fit in together. Now to me they already look a little bit awkward, but let's see, will that go on the inside? So what we have is this panel, this small panel, which if placed in right will sit right there and create that little bit of a sill, while this top panel sits down into place and gives us that nice sinister viewport. So all we need to do is just glue this in, glue our little armoured sill in first. And that will sit in just there. Make sure it's all sitting nice and level and whatnot. So that's alright, we'll then run another little bit of glue across the front. Just to help seal that in nicely. we'll take our roof, which will then glue in along all these little sort of shelf shapes. And then that will slot in down on top of all that. Just make sure it's all in good and tight. And there we have our quite sinister looking armoured viewports there for it. Quite nice looking. So then we'll slide that over to the side. We'll then build our little bits of exhaust. There's glue there and up either side a little bit. And then press our pieces together. And while we're at this, because this seems to be a little warped, I'm just going to add some glue. And see if we can't get these parts to sit good and tight together. So with the exhaust now glued together a bit more firmly, get a good look round at the back. The exhaust chain, the little chain that's holding it in place, will glue into the square notch here, and the exhaust pipe will go into this sort of circular shape here at the back. So all we'll do is we'll take the glue and we'll glue the exhaust into place and roughly glue our exhaust pipe into place, with the shorter bended end going into the exhaust itself, sort of roughly sitting at a right angle, something like that. So then we'll just glue the exhaust on, and hopefully the whole thing will sit in okay. Right, this bit may be a bit hard for the viewers to look at, but we need to line up our parts properly here, so bear with me just a moment. Once the exhaust pipe's in, we need to glue that in place. Hopefully everything's sitting a bit more firmly as the glue starts to set. So there we have it. Our exhaust's in. As you can see where the exhaust has been joined to the bottom of the chassis, that's the glue point for that part, and the other glue point obviously is the chain that's holding it in place. So with that step complete, we'll now leave this to set for the glue to set for a while, and then we'll come back and work on a bit further. So on to step 9. We have quite an intensive step here. We have the Dozer Blade to put on, we have some side doors with their little running boards with their steps, a couple of handrails, a secondary exhaust for some reason, who knows, it's an Ork. We have some extra armoured panels that we're going to put on as well, because we're planning on putting the armoured roof on top of the crew compartment, as well as a rear door which is going to go into the back and seal off the cab. We're going to tackle this in a couple of mini steps. We're going to do the Dozer Blade first, then we'll apply it. So the Dozer Blade basically comes in 3 pieces that we'll glue together, in theory. We'll glue together and create our large front Dozer Blade, as you can see here. So we'll just take our glue and just run a good strong line down in the middle and up at the, just glue that together, press that in like so. We'll then take the other side and we'll glue that together. And slot it into place as well there. Just hold it firm for a few minutes, or a couple of moments. Make sure there's not too much excess. So with that now glued together, what we'll do is just move that out of the way for the time being and let that set. We'll then bring in our majoritively built model, and we'll slide that over just to the back there. We'll then start to bring in all our other little bits and pieces that we need. So we have our bulkhead door and its corresponding little wheel handle. Or correction, this is the bulkhead door with the proper area for it. We have one of the side doors, the other side door. We have our two sort of running panels, our little steps to get up into the cab. We have the two handles which will glue onto these. We have our second exhaust, and then we have our 4 extra panels which will then help to support the armoured roof on the top of the model. So we'll apply these 4 pieces first. So we need to take this piece first, which will go on to the front, this front corner here, and hopefully with any luck, if we dry fit that, we'll see what way this piece goes. Somewhere about there. So that will sit on top, leaving more little gaps, just because that's the Orky way. So what we'll do is just run some glue along the top of those panel lines. Just wipe that up there. We'll also run some glue along down that slot to give it plenty of contact. And we'll then place this part in, like so. And if we want, we can just add a little bit of extra glue on the corner of those panel lines, just to make sure that we're getting a good strong fit there. The other piece we need to do, which again has another little slot along the bottom, we'll go to the opposite corner here, and once again we try to dry fit this first to see what way it'll sit. So something much like that. Once again, glue along the top of that panel and glue along down the back of that beam of metal, and then that should hopefully glue into place there, like so. So we'll take the 2 back panels, and these will both sit down over with their 2 little slots. They will sit down over the back like that. I think I actually got that right there. So if we just apply the glue down the back of those 2 little pieces of metal that are sticking out and along there, and then we can press that down into place. We'll jig around with it a little bit, try and line it up as best we can, as you can see. And then same procedure on the last one. Take the glue and run it along the bottom of the panel, and that will sit there. So you can see those are our 4 panels that will then support the armoured roof that we're going to glue on later. Our next step along, we're going to take our 2 running boards, our 2 steps, and then we'll glue those into place. So on this side of the model we need the larger square one, and it will just glue along the slot on the bottom of it, and press into place like so. We'll then take one of these handles and it will glue in to the base of the step and into one of these holes up the side. So we'll glue either end of the handle, put one end into the step and one end into the hole at the top of the door frame. This also helps to line up the part quite nicely, as everything will have a nice tight fit and should be all in properly there. We'll also take a door for this side, which is the open slotted vision door. And if we run some glue just along the hinge area, and what we'll do is press that into place like so. If you're being really adventurous and you were a big conversionist, what you could do is try and build yourself a cab on the inside of this thing to actually have those doors open and show some internal detail, which would be quite nice if we were able to do it. So with that side on, we'll rotate round. Well, actually we'll continue on this side and we'll put our secondary exhaust on as well. While it's on this side, it'll just glue into these two open shaped slots here. We'll just apply glue to the inside of each of those. And press those parts in. Like so. So now we'll rotate around and we'll put our other step in, which obviously with the hole to the top, glue along the back of the part, slot that into place, take our other handle, glue to the base, glue to the end, and then press it into place like so. We'll then take our other door, which has the little slots like a jail bar sort of window, and we'll glue it in to place. We'll glue it in with these hinges on this side. So we'll just run the glue down between those two holes at the side there. And what we need to do is just press that in, and that part should fit quite nicely there, like so. Then the final piece is our internal door, and we'll glue our little handle on first, just a little dab of glue into it. We'll then press that wheel into the door, and then from the outside we'll put a dab of glue here and a dab of glue down at the bottom, which is quite difficult to see there as the model is getting quite big. And we just press that door in like so. So that seals off our cab quite nicely, and with that step complete we'll now move on. So bring our chassis back in briefly, as we forgot a step. We now have our Dozer Blade to put on now that it is set. We'll take these two large notches on the inside of it and run some glue around those. How could you forget such an orky step? Now the parts should be glued enough not to fall apart, and well enough that they'll just pry open and let that part sit down. You can see that is one of the more visually effective parts of this model, makes it look nice and bulky. And now we shall move on to our next step.